Okay, today we're going to begin in chapter 3 and down in verse 16. Now, as we're doing this, I see that Jordan just walked in 1 minute late, and that means marriage has changed him. Still taking off in the morning early? For Boston? Okay. I might give you a little advice as you're leaving in there because we won't see you anymore. But he's going to go back and visit around, all the historical sites and so forth that has back there. And so last week, I said, next time we see Jordan, he will know about everything that there is to know. Well, Rick Capelli called me and he said, we had a big discussion at dinner time today and said, we figure it's going to take Jordan several years to start understanding all of this. He's going to be learning things from that wife in years and years from now. So I don't know, I might ask him, do you know everything yet, or are you not everything? Okay. Jordan, after I was married, Helen and I went back for a meeting back in Pennsylvania, and there was a real nice lady who said, I want to show you around all these historical sites on one day. And so she put us in the car, and away we went. We went down to where George Washington went across the Delaware that Christmas day with ice floating down the river. And had he not done that, why, we wouldn't be sitting here this morning, and the way we are, America wouldn't be as it is. And so it's a great historical thing. It's a moving thing, see this history. And so she said, now, one more thing. She said, if we eat fast and then take off, I can take you through Valley Forge. Great, okay, we're going to get to go through Valley Forge. I had to get home to preach. She said, we just have enough time. So we had our hamburger, and there was a little strip shopping area right there. And down at the end, it said consignment store. And so we walked out, and Helen says, oh, I want to go see what's in there. So I said, nope, we got to go right now. And Helen looked at this other woman, and she said, let's go. And the way they went. And so I yelled with them with a voice of authority and telling them, you get in there and get right back out here. I'm going to Valley Forge. So I stood there and looked at the river just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more, and a little bit more. And finally they came out. And I said, okay, let's go to Valley Forge. And she looked and she said, we don't have time now. Said, jump in the car. We jumped in the car and went straight back home, and I got up and preached that night. So I just want to tell you how things turn out. Okay. We might start out this morning, as I see Dave Bray sitting up there and saying that Dave just took vacation. He went to California. And you say, what in the world are you talking about? We're in the book of Ecclesiastes. Well, that vacation can illustrate what the book of Ecclesiastes is all about. And that is that as we look at this, it just happens over and over and over again in everything in our life. But it's talking about life in general. How do you look at life in general? What really is it about? Now, leading up to the days of where they headed to California, Dave was really excited. Getting ready to go down there. I'm going to take my family down and show them where I used to live, and going to go to Disneyland, and this is going to be a wonderful trip. So really excited. So he gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning. They leave, and away they go. Really excited. They go down and have a tremendous vacation, just a wonderful vacation. Get in the car and head back up. And so they drive back in, and they all go to bed. And they say, man, we're tired. And so they ruined their day's work, got up the next morning. Boy, we're tired. He comes in yesterday to try to get caught up on his work. Went home just a little bit later. Said, I'm going to go home and take a nap. Now, the whole point is this. His whole attitude had changed. One from great happiness, anticipation, and glee and so forth, to one of, oh, no. Now I got to, like this. Well, some wise man said long ago that any time that you're getting ready to take a trip, it's the journey not the destination that gives you happiness. That when you get to the destination and you accomplish your goal, you don't find the happiness that you think you will. But on the destination, the traveling from here to there, and the anticipation, and all of this, that really is the fun part. So think about that in everything that you do. If you're building a house, whatever it is, it's the anticipation. You're drawing up the plans. Wow, everything is tremendously great. Wow. But once it's all done, you've moved in, everything is the way it's supposed to be, you settle back down, now life goes on just as it had before. And so it's the journey. That's what Solomon is saying. He's saying, I want you to understand, if you look at life as a whole, it's the journey that really is what will give you happiness. Now keep in mind that he's talking about life on this earth without God. Don't put God in the picture yet. He's going to put God back in the picture in a little while. But what's life all about? What do you do to find happiness? So he said, I tried wisdom and knowledge, and that only brought about grief. I tried pleasure and riches, and that was nothing, just a bunch of hot air. It didn't bring happiness. He said, I've tried everything that there is. I worked hard, got very rich. That didn't bring happiness. He said, in fact, when I got rich, then I realized that I had more problems than I ever had, because now I realize that I'm going to leave it to somebody, and who knows, they'll probably be a fool, and so what am I going to do? So that didn't bring happiness. So everything he looked at, it just won't bring any happiness. So you say, boy, that's despondent. There's no way on this earth to find happiness. No, there is. That's where this last week he gave us the answer. And he said it's the journey that you're on. It's not the destination, but it's the journey. It's the way you live every day of your life. It's not really how you end up. You end up rich. You end up poor. You end up whatever it is. That's not going to bring you happiness. But what you do in order to get there is going to bring you happiness. So he said, it is not the riches that you might glean in your journey, but it is the journey itself. It's enjoying your labor. So he said, make sure that you enjoy the labor that you do. Enjoy that labor every day. Enjoy your work. Enjoy life every day. That's what will bring you happiness. Now that is a simple lesson. And I kind of feel embarrassed talking about it and repeating it again, but it's one that we never learn. Human beings, we just never pick up on it and really never learn it. We're always thinking about that. Take a child. You take a child, and you just can't wait. Can't wait for the child to be born. And then the child is born, and it starts crying. Wakes up in the middle of the night. Oh, no. Oh, boy, it's no fun getting up in the middle of the night and feeding that kid. Wow, I sure be glad when he sleeps all night. So he starts sleeping all night. But then he does something else. Scott was telling me about a little boy there yesterday. He said now then he's learned how to take a chair, pushes the chair over to the table, jumps on the chair, jumps up on the table, and starts doing his dance. So Scott said, oh man, so got to keep an eye on him all the time. So now then he's waiting for him to learn, don't do this, do this. And so it goes on, and so when he gets another year older, it's just going to get worse. And Scott's going to rub his forehead. Oh man, I'll be glad when he gets out of these terrible twos. And then you go into the threes and the fours and the tens and right on up the line. And when do you enjoy your children? That's the point. When does a parent settle down and say, I'm enjoying this child? Is it when he's crying at 2 o'clock in the morning? Or when he's crawling on the table and about to fall off and break a bone? Or when it's a teenager and you're worried about what is happening? Or an adult, and then you go on to life, and you say, there's never a time when there's not a problem. Okay, that's true. And that's what he's saying. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy every day as you go along. Now, he's going to make that point again right here. And he's going to tell us this. Now, last week he said, just remember this. God has made everything beautiful in its time. When you're supposed to be doing this, it's a good thing. It's a fun thing. It's something to enjoy in its time. Now, when Gus gets to be 10 years old, and he runs over and jumps up on the table and starts doing a dance, there's nothing beautiful in that. And that's when you know that you've got a problem. But it's not in his time, see, to do it. So God made everything beautiful in its time. So let's learn to take that. He said, now another thing God's done is he put eternity in the heart of man. All of us wrestle with that problem of eternity. Where did I come from? Where am I going? We have about 70 to 80 years on this earth to live here, but we have this other problem. It's not just, what do I do here? But it's, where will I be going? What will life be like over there? And so we all wrestle with that problem about the future. And it says God has made it so we're never going to find out. We're never going to find out what makes things tick in this world. And try as you may, God's made it this way, and he made it for a purpose. That's the interesting thing. And you say, well, of all the philosophers and psychologists and that's lived, nobody has been able to really sit down and explain it all. No, that's what he's saying, and said God did that for a purpose. Now let's start in verse 16. He said, and moreover, I saw under the sun, that's on this earth, in the place of justice that wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness that wickedness was there. Now he said, here's another thing that I've noticed in life, where there should be justice in our court systems, in our rulers, anywhere where there should be justice, it turns up there are wickedness there. Now you stop to think about all the places where there should be justice. There should be justice in court systems. How many times do they hand out bad decisions? There should be justice by anybody who says they take the Bible and follow the Bible. Any, let's say, preacher that takes the Bible and says, I follow the Bible, you should find justice. Now, as you start thinking about it, what do you think about when you think about preachers? Now, Scott and I have both told you, we're very embarrassed in this day and age to tell people we're a preacher. If I go to the barber shop, he says, what do you do? Boy, I wish I could tell him that I was an engineer or a potter or used car salesman. Or I wish I could tell him that. But when I say preacher, I've had this to happen, I don't know how many times throughout my life. I'm a preacher. Everything is just going great. We're talking about all this, and you say that, and it shuts everything up. Yeah, well, that's good. And so you know what they're thinking. The most blatant thing that ever happened to me was one time, this guy's talking to this young guy, and that's when I was a young guy. And so he was looking for work, and he said, what do you do? And I said, well, I'm a preacher. This was back in the days when I was happy to say that. I'm a preacher. He said, oh. That's a pretty good racket to be in, isn't it? So he's wanting me to say, well, yeah, it is. I mean, look at all the money I get, and, and here's how you go about it. But that's the attitude. So where you would expect to find righteousness, you find wickedness in this earth. And yet we have to live with all of this. But he said, now here's another thing to always keep in mind. God will judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and for every work. So keep in mind, God will judge. They might live on this earth, be wicked, immoral, cheating, hurting you, but God will judge. Now here's the problem with that. You say, that's not fair. Here it is, they're cheating me now. And so I don't have the money that I should have because they've cheated me out of it. It's cost my family so much. It's not fair. And they're just going along life and having a good life. And somebody said, yeah, but they'll pay for it later. Well, what is your attitude, honestly? Honestly, what is your attitude? Well, yeah, I know that, but we want to pay for it right now, don't we? See? And we're not happy unless they do. All right, Solomon says, just remember, God will judge them. He said, for there is a time for every purpose and every work. So, God says there is a time for these people to pay for what they've done. In Romans, he said, vengeance is mine. The word vengeance means payback. I'll see that justice happens. Now, there's a certain time that all of this is supposed to happen. Thank you, Gene. A certain time it's supposed to happen. Sometimes it happens right now. Madoff cheated all these people. He's in prison. Last couple of weeks, while the news has been full of how his family's suffering, his wife is suffering, and he's so sad, and he's tried to commit suicide, and everything is going bad. And then I saw in the news a couple of days ago, these people, it showed that this man and woman, and he had taken every dime that they had, and they had lost $2.7 million, the ones I'm looking at now, he had taken, and all that they had to live on was their Social Security and what little retirement he had. And so they were upset, and they said, we're sick and tired of hearing how bad the Madoffs have it. Here it is that he's in prison, and he's depressed. We're sick and tired of it because he cheated thousands, tens of thousands of people out of their life savings. What should you do with a guy like that? Well, put him in the darkest hole that there is, huh? Or what do you do? Death is too good. What do you do? This is where God says, don't worry about that. I'll take care of that. Sometimes you pay for it here. Sometimes you pay for it after death. But he said, just remember, there's a purpose for every time. I said in my heart that God may, I said in my heart, it is because of the sons of men that God may prove them, and that they may see that let me get my glasses back on, and that they themselves are but beasts. So I said, this crazy mixed up judicial system, this system of where people don't pay when I want them to pay, like the Madoffs and all these tens of thousands of people to feel about them. What's the purpose? Well, there's a purpose. There's a purpose. And he said, now here's the reason, the purpose. He said, God made it this way so that God could prove or test us human beings. He could put us to the test, and that we can understand, we'll finally understand something. Now, what is it that we're finally going to understand? Okay, you say, Lowell, what should be done with Madoff? I don't know. If I said, do this and cut his fingers off and putting him in a dungeon and whatever it is, there'd still be thousands of people say more needs to be done and this or that. And you know, the feelings are out there, and I don't know what, I don't know what needs to be done, you see in there. Well, God has made it this way, and he's made it this way so that you and I can learn one thing. And here's an interesting thing. That's something we need to learn. Now, what's the other lesson that we've learned? It's the labor. Enjoy your labor. Now, what is this lesson? What's the purpose? Why has God made this world in the way that he's made it? It's to show you and me, as inhabitants of the earth, we don't know any more than an animal. That's what it's in. Now, we know a lot more than an animal when it comes to arithmetic or sending a man to the moon or doing something. But about life itself is what I'm saying. What is the purpose of life? What should you do in order to be happy? Said, God made it this way, so you're not going to figure it out. Try as you may, he told us in the last chapter, you're not going to figure it out. In this chapter, he said, you're going to end up understanding that you're just like a beast. You're never going to be able to figure it out. Look what he said. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beast. Even one thing befalleth them, as the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they all have one breath, and man hath no preeminence above the beast, for all is vanity. Now, that's a pretty sad statement. And if we don't understand what Solomon's doing, we're going to come up with totally wrong conclusion. Let me illustrate. Suppose you go out here and pull somebody in off the street. They've never read their Bible. They don't know what Ecclesiastes is about. You pull them in and you say, can you read? Oh, yeah. No, I have a doctor's degree in English. I'm a teacher at university. Okay. We'd like for you to read this verse right here and tell us what it means. Read this verse here and tell us really what it means. And so they read it, and it says there's no difference between a man and a beast because both of us die. Both man and beast, there's one breath in them. They die. So there's no difference in you and a dog. You might say, yeah, but we know better. Well, let's read the next verse. In the next verse, he says, all go into one place, all are of the dust, and turn to dust again. Who knoweth the spirit of man, whether it goeth upward, and the spirit of the beast, whether it goeth downward to the earth? Wherefore, I saw that there's nothing better than that a man should enjoy in his works, for that is his portion, for who shall bring him back to see what shall be after him? So, he said, as you look, man and beast have one end. They're both going to die. Going to be one time when you take your last breath. Now think about it this way. If a man and his dog are riding on a motorcycle, they get in an automobile accident, it's a terrible accident, and it kills the both of them, the man and the dog. So you go out, and they're on the highway, lays the man dead, there's the dog dead. Okay, what's the difference between them? You say, well, here's what happens. The spirit of man goes up and the spirit of the dog goes down. He said, prove it. Prove that. You can't prove that. Who knows whether the spirit of man goes up and the spirit of the dog goes down and cease to exist? How do you know? So you got to sit there and scratch your head. There's no difference between a man and a dog. Wow. So you ask this university professor or anybody else, what is life all about? Nothing. It's just like the life of a beast. It has no purpose. When we're dead, we're dead. when we're gone, we're gone. Steve Jobs, who just died, that great genius, he explained in his book, the guy asked him, have you done much thinking about death and God and life after death? And he said, well, yeah. He said, the way I picture it is, he said, life is kind of like a light switch that you go along and all of a sudden somebody turns off the switch and everything just stops. So what happens in your house? Somebody comes in and they pull the breaker switch, everything goes off. Nothing left. You're gone. So I said, that's the way I figured it is. There's just nothing left. You just stop. That's there. Huh. Not much to look forward to out there, is there? Now, if you read this section, and this section only, that's your conclusion you're going to come to. That's why I have emphasized over and over again. When we're studying this, let's study chapter 1. Let's see what he has to say. And let's understand that Solomon is saying we're going to try to find out what life is all about if there is no God. If this is it, what is life all about? He said, you're never going to figure it out. You're just like a beast. You don't know what's going to happen to you. You don't know anything. Now get ready because, see, in a little while he's going to change this whole thing. And he's going to tell you, he's going to say, here's what happens. If you want to know what happens, he's going to say, here's what happens. And he's going to tell us that the spirit of man goes back and lives with God. And he's going to tell us, if you want to be happy here, you're going to have to boil it down and you're going to have to be obedient to God. He's going to tell us that, but not yet. Not yet. We're studying in the section of where he's showing people, if you just live life on this earth, here's the predicament that you're in. You're not going to know that. He said, now, here's another thing. Nobody's ever going to bring you back and show you, okay, here's what's happened to you since you died. See? Nope, you go through it once, you're gone. Abraham Lincoln doesn't come back. Nobody comes back and redoes it again. You can't see into the future. That's the uniqueness of the book of Ecclesiastes. Every book has a purpose. The book of Ecclesiastes is really a unique book because it deals with life on this basis. Now then he goes on and he said, then I returned and saw all the oppressions that are done under the sun. And behold, the tears of such that were oppressed, and they had no comforter. And on the side of their oppressors there was power, but they had no comforter. Wherefore I praised the dead that have been dead long ago more than they that are alive. Yea, rather better than both did I esteem him that hath not been born yet, when who hath not seen the evil work that is done under the sun. So he said, when you come to this conclusion, what is your conclusion if there is no God? And you see all of this. He said, I look at it and I see the righteous people and they are oppressed, they're hurting, and there's nobody to comfort them because the people in charge just oppress them more, cause more problems. When has there ever been no poor people in the world? When has there ever been nobody that's being oppressed? No government that's taking away freedoms and throwing their citizens in jail? When has it ever happened? And you say, well, it's never happened. Even as we look at it over the last year, we look at Egypt and, oh boy, they're free. They're free. And now then we find out that the government that's coming in is Al-Qaeda based and worse than what they had. And they're persecuting people over there who believe in Christ, Christians. They're killing them, burning down their church buildings. Oh boy, we're back worse than what we were. Well, what about Libya? Boy, Libya is it's a great illustration. Free of Gaddafi, yeah, yeah, free of him. And now then, what's happened? Well, a more extreme government is moving in to take over, and so we've got that problem that we got to put up with. There's never been a time. So he said, here really is the best thing that I can say. That those people who have already died, they've passed through this life, they've already died, they're better than the living. Because we who are living, we've got problems. He said, but better yet are the people who've never been born. It would be better never to be born than to be born into a world without God. That's his point that he's making. If this is all there is, if evolution is true, somehow or another the ocean got stirred up and a little amoeba came into existence and turned into a chimpanzee and it turned into you, and you're going to live this life of misery and then die, and then there's nothing out there. Wow. It would have been better never to have been born. But you've got to keep in mind, Ecclesiastes, the writer of Ecclesiastes is saying, if there is no God, this is what you find out. But in a little while, he's going to turn that, and we're going to see what life is all about. Okay, class dismissed.